some point, we will get you to move closer, be closer to the action, because there's something about holding an energy in a room. And the more dissipated it is, the harder it is to hold that energy in the room. So if you arrived a little late, don't worry, no judgment. We know yesterday was a late day, today was an early morning. But if you can just make your way closer, there is something about being in community. And that is actually an interesting word, community. And so I come from Kenya. And in Kenya, I happen to speak 3 languages. So, well, 4 languages. English is one, as you can tell, obviously. Second one is Kiswahili. And so I do want to invoke those who speak Kiswahili and say, habari zenu leo. Okay, we have a few. Let's go a little deeper. How many can answer this question? Muriega. Same 2 people right here at the front. What are the chances? There's one more, Archbishop Moheria at the back. And I see another hand, but I can't tell who it is. Fantastic. Now, this is really, really, really hard. Nango. We have some Luos in the house. Fantastic. Well, remember yesterday we talked about water and being water. Not water, water. Remember this? And there are 3 things we said we are going to do. We're going to flow, right? We're going to sit in heat and ask ourselves those difficult questions. And we're going to refract when we leave. How many people saw the art installation last night at the park after the rain? It was a perfect example of what refraction is. Bubbles floating in the air, beautiful light pinging it as it goes, and created this magical moment that was truly breathtaking. So those are the bookends of this conversation we're having over the next few days. Yesterday was flow, get to know your family, get to read the room, get into the energy of the room. Tomorrow is about refraction. How do we take this beauty that the messages that we hear, how do we take it into the world? But today is about sitting in that heat, sitting in that discomfort. And so if you're not ready to ask yourself difficult questions, as you're hearing the people on stage give answers to, then you're doing yourself an incredible disservice. So allow yourself to sit in those difficult questions. Now, we also said yesterday that I'm the serious guy, right? Serious guy wearing serious clothes today, as you can tell, other than my funky shoes, but that's okay. And so the next part of the discussion is about business. So much of our world is currently structured around an economic model that is purely extractive because it is in service of one thing: shareholder value maximization, which essentially means be as profitable as possible so that you can put money in your shareholders' pockets. But we have seen what that has done to the world. We have seen this incredible force of the markets and the invisible hand have led us to these divisions, to the challenges of climate change, to the destruction of our planet. And so can we imagine a new world? Can we imagine a world in which that economic model is actually harnessed and changed for good? And we have 2 amazing speakers. And so I'll invite the first one, Cohen Gilbert, who in his previous life, I realized today, we worked at McKinsey. It's okay, you can come on stage. Let the people see you. We worked at McKinsey at some point, that's part of your bio. Jay then did one particularly cool thing, which for those who are sports enthusiasts, there's a brand called And One. Jay founded the company that built And One. Allen Iverson, there you go. For those who remember, for those of us who are a little bit older, we don't age ourselves. But then Jay then asked this question about business. What is business and what does it do? How can we make it a true force for good in the 21st century? And so launched B Lab and now is going to tell us about the amazing work he's doing in trying to build this community of business and business people asking that question and, more importantly, doing something different. So over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Evan. Good morning, well-beings. So I've got the pleasure, the privilege, and the peril of following this morning's opening because if you're a business person, you really want to follow the Dalai Lama, an imam, a rabbi, and a priest. And so it occurs to me that the most important question we could be asking ourselves is what is a sacred economy? How would we create a sacred economy? How would we participate and support a sacred economy? And as most of you are probably guessing, the answer to that is with salad dressing. So my journey in helping to build a sacred economy begins with this bottle of salad dressing from a brand called Newman's Own. At the time, as Edwin mentioned, I was co-founder and running a company called And One, and we were in the middle of a rapid growth over a 5-year period to a $200 million plus global brand, competing with Nike and other large global companies. But in the middle of that journey, at our inflection point, at our height of our success, I ran into a firestorm. In September of 2011, 3 things happened in rapid succession. First, 9/11. Being born in New York and growing up in New York, I had many friends there, including in the building. My sister was rescued from first responders that day. Later that week, within 3 days, our father, for unrelated reasons, died of lung cancer. And just 2 weeks after that, a beloved colleague of mine from And One, Jean-Bernard Jout, died in a car accident on his way to work at And One. And so I was absolutely ripped apart. And all of the success that we had been having all of a sudden felt very insignificant. And I started to think about, hey, we're giving 5% of our profits to charity. We've got a great place to work. Pets and kids are in the office all the time. It feels like a wonderful place, but it doesn't feel like enough. And I started groping in a place of not knowing. I started groping for what could be a higher calling for business. And I found the salad dressing that had been in my cabinet for years. And 5% for charity is not as good as 100% for charity. What if there were a whole group of companies that gave 100% of their profits to charity? And I started talking about this community of Newman Ventures around the world. That would be this evergreen resource for charitable wealth, because that seemed like the highest expression of what you could do for business for good. But what happened in that period of not knowing is I had to slow down to start learning. And what I learned was that giving profits away is actually one of the least important things a business could do to create positive impact in the world. There were so many other things, so many other powers in business, in their products, in who they choose to serve, in what markets they choose to serve, in their practices and how they treat their suppliers, their environmental footprints, their worker practices, all of those things were way more important than what amount of profits they would give to charity. Out of that evolution from Newman Ventures to B corporations, we built a community of businesses that were not just giving profits to charity, but were generating those profits responsibly, that were using their business as a force for good, that were creating benefit not only for shareholders, but for all stakeholders. Over the last 15 years, this community of B corporations has grown. Now there are over 5,000 certified B corporations in over 150 industries in 80 countries around the world. All of them are redefining success in business so that their purpose is to create value for all, and they're measured, and their performance is measured by an independent third party to make sure that they're creating value and they're worthy of your trust. But we realized that going from building one company to building a community of companies was still not sufficient. And so the B Corp community started to partner with other communities of businesses around the world. Hundreds of other allies for economic systems change that realized that each one of those companies, while doing heroic work, were operating in a system with misaligned incentives and a culture with contrary norms. How do we shift the system to put wind at the backs of these entrepreneurs as opposed to in their face? And over a summer of co-creation, those 450 organizations came together to say, these are the imperatives for economic systems change. We have to design a new economic system for interdependence. We have to focus its energy on the highest purpose of investing for justice. And we implement that by making sure that that system is accountable to all stakeholders, not just shareholders, with our measurement systems, with our incentive programs, with our governance programs. We started working with artists, including artists that are here today, through the Amplifier Network, to translate that vision of an interdependent economy into what it would mean for real workers. What does it mean to move from thinking about a minimum wage to a living wage, from an economy that breeds financial insecurity to one that fosters financial security? How do we shift our mindsets from a winner-take-all mentality to one of creating shared prosperity? How do we use technology not to concentrate, but to distribute power? How do we change who is in power to change how power gets used? How might our boards and leadership be representative of the world that we live in, instead of everybody in leadership looking pretty much like me? All of this, we're at this great turning point in history. From a 20th century version of capitalism that is focused on maximizing shareholder value to a 21st century version of capitalism that is focused on maximizing value for all stakeholders. From one focused on creating short-term profits to creating long-term well-being on a healthy planet. Now, the challenge here is that the system was not designed for this. So all of those 5,000 B corporations, or the 200,000 companies that are using those same impact management standards to measure their progress along the way, is insufficient. We need to change the operating system of business, and we need to change the mindset of business leaders. This is what I would offer as the golden rule of business. And we need it to shift from being something that's just optional to something that is required. All businesses, not just B corporations, all businesses and all financial institutions. Because in capitalism, capital has the power. So we can't equip businesses to do one thing, but then have investors serving a different master. So all businesses and all financial institutions shall be responsible not only for their financial returns, those are important, but also for their impact on all stakeholders, and not only that, but on the natural and social systems on which healthy markets and all life depend. We need to upgrade the operating system of business to fix the source code error in capitalism, which is shareholder primacy. We need to upgrade the operating system of capitalism with this new model, which says that we are responsible for all. But a new operating system with operators with the same old mindsets won't work. They will lack the imagination, they will lack the creativity. And so in addition to the operating system, the technical solution, we need a heart-driven solution. And there are two things here. At an individual level, people like me in suits that are basically moving money all around the world to drive what gets invested, not that measure their success and their self-worth by their net worth. We need to help them, help me, shift our mindset to defining our value by our well-being and the well-being we create for others. And that involves this most important next step, which is to embrace a mindset of not knowing. That same kind of not knowing that I felt when I was broken open with those 3 events in September of 2001, or the same not knowing that happened for me when I was suffering from cancer and spending 6 months in chemo, thinking about what would happen if I was lucky enough to survive. What would I want to bring back? What would I want to work on if I was playing with the house's money? And what I realized, I was at my most powerful when I embraced the discomfort of not knowing. The idea that I was totally open to the situation and to whatever the next move might be. And so as we sit here today in Basque country, in Spain, I bring you the words of a famous Spanish poet, Antonio Machado, and the backdrop of some of the mountains in Basque country. Caminante no hay camino, se hace el camino al andar hace el camino. Fellow travelers, there is no road, there is no path. The path, we make the path by walking. By walking, we make the path. Embrace that we don't know and make us open and let us walk humbly into an economy that is centered, a sacred economy that is centered on love and extending that love to all of the people that we are in relationship with, not all the people that we were doing transactions with, but all the people that we are in relationship with through business. And as we embrace that spirit of not knowing, let's remember to walk humbly, because we could be wrong. Thank you.
I see the challenge in the mind going. I see the noodling happening, which is fantastic. Our next speaker has, I think, one of the most brilliant introductions to her bio. If you don't have the app, I'll keep reminding you, if you don't have the app, download the app, log in, make sure that you get a sense of who are the people who are coming to us. And because we're short on time, we're not going to read the full bios. But this is how Kate's, who's coming on next, bio begins. Kate grows things. People, businesses, and movements. Right? Isn't that cool? People, businesses, and movements. And for each of these things to succeed, we only evolve at the speed of trust. For each of these things to succeed, we can only evolve at the speed of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your abilities, trust in your colleagues, trust in your community, trust in the world. And that's part of the challenge that we all have, is how do we build more bridges to have that trust that allows us to take the leaps that we want to make. And so Kate, I'll ask you to come on, and actually, when she was in background kind of rehearsing her speak, I saw her do something which is cool, and I said we're going to incorporate this. So Kate, you're going to shimmy in as a shimmy out. She promised she would shimmy.
Reggie,
there you go.
This is for you, my shimmy sass. So, and if you don't think that took a lot of trust, I'm just telling you it did. It's so great to see everyone, and for a second, I just want to acknowledge the moment of true grace we started our day with, right? We saw multiple different religions come together in a true moment of harmony. And if that doesn't fuel well-being, I'm not quite sure what does. So I just want to say thank you again for the great start. So Jay talks about sacred economy, and I'm all for that. And the issue is that we're living in a trust crisis. And trust is the underpinning of everything. And trust is what's going to help us build that sacred economy. Now, I want to start with a story. It's 1979. It's a stormy day in El Ceibo, which is a small town in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. And we walk down, we collect our respective compatriots until we number 8. We are known as the El Ceibo Ocho. We are 8 teenage girls who are there to perform vaccines as part of Amigos de las Americas. We continue on and we go to the hospital. We pick up our little cooler that's got our vaccines of polio, diphtheria, and tetanus. We hop into the back of a beat-up 210 truck and head off into a jungle. We're dropped off one by one, accompanied by a male companion who we just met that morning. And then we're informed, we're going to pick you up in 8 hours, 5 o'clock. Off we traipse up to go on these trails that we have yet to ever walk. We perform the vaccines to 6 to 7 different villages, and then we walk back down. And we find our way, I don't know how, and we continue back on to the hospital. Now, I start with that because think of the degree of trust along every single step of the way that took. Trust from behalf of the worker, the hospital, me, my parents, who I'm pretty sure weren't quite sure what I was going to be doing, but I'm so glad that I got to experience that because it instilled in me a deep sense of self-trust and trust in other, which has informed how I accept and I show up in the world. And isn't it weird that we have absolutely no qualms putting our lives into the hands of complete strangers when we hop into an Uber, a plane, a Lyft? And when we're welcoming to give our trust to people we've just met, I find it equally peculiar, we tend to distrust the people we know most, especially the environments we spend the majority of our lives in, our companies, our organizations. So we've now shifted from the sharing economy to the stalker economy, and now we're in an economy that's steeped in just deep, deep distrust. And that was just recently explained by a global workforce survey that Edelman shared, in which 50%, think about that, 50% of the people said there wasn't a soul in their companies that they trusted, nor would they ever imagine mentioning a problem for fear of retaliation. And of the remote workforce that answered, 75% felt that they were being monitored by their employers, and worse yet, that the contents of their computers were being rifled through. So how did we get there? Well, because in business, when we have a problem, we throw people, we throw money, and we throw technology. So social capital, financial capital, and then intellectual capital. And I would argue, all terrific forms, however, they're all rendered completely useless unless this one imperative form of capital that's so overlooked is not included, and that is trust. Because you're gonna have all the procedures and the guidelines, protocols, think COVID, your own personal experience and facts, think climate change. Without trust, no move is made. Everything is taken at a standstill. For you see, I believe that we are all stewards, and I know everybody in here believes that we're all stewards of the planet, right? And what we do is we gather together. It's how we keep ourselves alive and the species alive, and we create these entities. They're called businesses and companies, and they have a soul, just as we have souls. And we create that sole purpose, which is to help create and answer problems large and small. Well, when we are lacking in that trust, none of this can take place, none of it whatsoever. And so whenever we say that business has to activate, which we've all been talking about, 3 fingers pointing back at us. We're the ones who activate that business, right? We're the leaders. We have to ignite the lifeblood of the company. That's what the workforce is really hungry for. That's what we want too, to know that we matter, what we're doing matters, what we're building together matters. So how do we do this? Well, I gotta tell you, how can we possibly expect anyone to trust us and follow us if we don't trust ourselves? And so I'm gonna bring out what I say I'm Betty Business and Jenny Juju, and I'm gonna bring out Jenny Juju right now. I'm going to tell you what we have to do is we have to go deep within, and we've got to ignite spirit, and we've got to bring the sole purpose of business activated. Because in so doing, we then will make sure that we follow through on what we say, and that is one way of creating trust. Now, curious, trustworthy leaders, are curious. They ask a lot of questions, and then they stick around, and they answer, and they listen respectfully, and they hear what's said as well as what's not said. Because they understand in building a trustworthy relationship, they're gonna get in that muck. It's gonna get ugly, it's gonna get uncomfortable. And they don't leave, they stay. They take a look at the world through what I call dragonfly eyes, meaning that they take into consideration the global workforce as well as the 5 different generations we're now working with under one roof. And in so doing, they're better able to make informed decisions and create a platform that's truly, truly steeped in trust. Because when I'm aligned to my truth and you're aligned in yours, there's no room for ego. That's the problem. Ego gets in the way all the time. And as such, then, we can move from me to we to us. Now, what I'm going to be doing is providing some examples, because I think a lot of times we talk lofty and up here, and I want to anchor it, because there are companies and people and leaders who are doing this, Lego being one. A few years ago, it was very beleaguered, and it took on a new CEO. There had been extraordinary distrust, and they had lost their purpose. They completely couldn't explain what their direction was, which is hard to believe, because Lego's pretty clear, right? I mean, it's a block, it's a toy, but as always, we try to make things more difficult than they are, right? It can be this simple, but we don't trust simple. But fortunately, the new CEO of Lego did. And he had a gut feeling that there was a nugget in the past that if he was able to bring it and tease it out to the future, he could help ignite the potential of what laid ahead. Secondly, he also recognized, wow, we've decimated our audience. And so as such, we no longer have a trusted group who believes in us. So he spent 2 years on a listening tour, rebuilding those relationships with internal and external stakeholders. And he came to recognize, yeah, I was right. It's all in the name, because Lego means play well. And isn't innovation just an overcomplicated adult term for play? It was created so that children of all ages could learn and grow by utilizing curiosity and logic, poet and quant ignited. And as such, he then recognized that there's a huge growth potential, and we can then expand out and create new product lines that'll grow along and age along with our audience, meaning there will always be a room, whatever your age, at the Lego table. And there's this amazing, deep-rooted community based in trust that is the Lego community. Now, to be that humble, you have to have extraordinary courage. You need to be really comfortable saying, I don't know, I need help, and then getting out of the way and actually accepting the help. Trustworthy leaders are very, very transparent, and as such, their workforce rewards it back to them. And they pay attention. They recognize that they need times to get refueled. And they also recognize that as a way to give others an opportunity for growth. Now, this is something that Warby Parker had put into play because they came to realize the necessity for autonomy. Because you see, autonomy, it presumes trust. Because in order to have trust, you have to give trust away. And this was something that they did from the get-go by actually putting the future of the company in the hands of the employees. And what they do is they go and they actually rebuild and they determine what the company is going to be working on through their process called Warble, and it's a crowdsourced effort. Now, the other thing they're doing is, by doing this, they're flattening the entire organization. They're making it more agile, more flexible, more responsive versus reactive. They're building out teams that are based on collaboration, cooperation, and frankly, interdepartmental. No more of those ivory towers that were based on karmic retributions. And with this autonomy, they are recognizing the individual genius of each of the employees. And the employees, in kind, respond by giving great new ideas over and over again. And they have to trust that the leaders are going to be okay with it if they make a mistake, that they're not going to lose their jobs. This is something Warby Parker has proven time and time again. So that leads me to all of us right now. Here we are, right? Do you trust yourselves? Do you actually know yourself, this person you call you? And I ask because I think we all so flippantly think, oh yeah, I know me, I got myself down. But do you really? When was the last time you asked yourself, what are my values? Because so often we get stuck in the ones that we very first started with. And it's important because leaders lead from where they are, not from an office, a title, a degree. Leaders lead from their hearts, from their souls, from their internal compasses. Leaders lead from who they are. And those who do succeed. And those who don't, in the long run, every time. So I would ask over these next few days, amongst this amazing city and these beautiful human beings and this art, that you take the time to actually ask yourself, do I trust myself? What are my values? What is my purpose? Am I actually doing it? And then, what actions could I take that could actually increase trust? Could I say, I don't know more? Could I ask for help more? Could I frankly just and let someone else fill the space? Because when you ignite your trust, you encourage others to do the same, because we're all mirrors for one another. And as for those values, we're going to need those, because values are going to be our true north compass points as we go through these very, very murky waters. We know that values get tested during times of adversity, but I also know that when you make a decision and you do the right thing, especially when it's hard, and it's based in those values, well, that's when trust is created. That's when belief is created. And that's when we can create this community and culture that once again will be trustworthy. So I would ask for you to take the time to set your path. Take the time to set it straight, because we really need you, all of us, to lead us into this next economy, the trust economy. Because without any internal change, no outer change is going to happen. And without collective change, no change matters. I thank you for entrusting me with your time.